Welcome back, everybody. It's live before lock. I'm joined by Alex Baker, the boss man himself. We've got a few games to break down for today. We've got a little bit of different schedules across the sites. We're going to be talking about some Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports. They'll be locking at 7:10 Eastern, so closer to normal time, as is FanDuel. DraftKings is going to be locking in an hour, which is why we're having the show right now. So I've got the best in the business here, breaking it down. Alex Baker, what's up, man? How you feeling about this slate? You ready to win some money?
Man, yeah, I think this could be a good one because it's going to require a little bit more extra attention. Kind of what we were talking about before the show, where you're going to set lineups in these games that usually, the lineups aren't going to come out until later in the evening. So that will require a little bit of late swapping, and maybe we can take advantage of that.
Yeah, when you swap, I know it's a little bit difficult on like Fantasy Cruncher, and I'm sure on a bunch of different optimizers. Obviously, we use Fantasy Cruncher here. Have you found a way to kind of perfect your late swapping while keeping your stacks intact?
Yeah, I mean, the way, and people aren't going to like to hear this, is just hand going through each lineup and tweaking them. Fantasy Cruncher is essential with their late swap optimizer too, because if there's like a guy that is scratched real late and you got to just get him out, that'll help a lot, because sometimes there might not be a 1-for-1 swap. So I've used that a lot of times, but if I have the time, I'm definitely going through hand swapping and trying to take advantage of just using all the salary and stuff. But how about you, Jake, man? What do you do?
Yeah, I was hoping you had a foolproof way for me to do it quickly, because I think late swap is probably one of the bigger edges in a bunch of different sports, but especially ones that play out over the course of 6, 8, 10 hours, like what this slate is going to be. But yeah, I mean, I think the best way, and probably the best way to build lineups in general, is by hand, right? But you just don't have the time to get 150 if you want to get all your action down in a tournament or max everything like you do. So optimizer is the next best thing if you know how to kind of make it work the way you want to. So I do the same thing, especially in NHL and MLB, because I want to keep my stacks together. You could probably just get away with it on NFL or use late swap optimizer and then go through all your stacks. But since I'm only playing a limited amount of lineups today for this MLB slate, I'm playing 20. Hand swapping will probably be my best course of action here. I don't know how, by the way, this is just a side note, I don't know how you keep track of all your lineups pages, like your lineups on DK, and because they how they lay them all out. And then by sport, and you're playing every sport. Do you ever find that difficult to keep track of?
Thank God that they fixed that lineups page, because otherwise we'd be totally out of luck. But ever since then, you can use filters in the search tool. That makes it not too bad. So shout out to DK for fixing that, because those were, I'm sure you guys all watching the show played back a year or two ago when if you had more than 30 lineups, the page would just take forever to load.
Yeah, it would just completely crash. So nice that they got that working well, especially for guys like you. And shout out to DraftKings, shout out to Yahoo for sponsoring the show. I noticed, and I don't know if I was late to the party on this, but I noticed Yahoo did drop their salaries for their 100K to first tournament, their 500K total prize pool NFL baller, which will lock next Sunday. Okay, so that is, 10 days away? We're 1 week away from a little bit of showdown action, single game action over on DraftKings and FanDuel. And then if you want to play one of the better tournaments, maybe the best tournament that you'll see in week one, the 500K baller, which I think overlaid quite a bit last year. I know they had overlay on Yahoo quite a bit. But even if it doesn't overlay, 12.3% management fee, that's about 75% of rake, they call it on other sites, that you're going to pay, which is really good for your long-term EV. So playing in this $10 Yahoo tournament, I think, is a great way to get started over on Yahoo. And to build your bankroll, they've got no management fee tournaments as well for MLB. They're running them in NBA as well. I'm seeing some in golf. It looks like those all filled up, but you still got a 25-cent no management fee tournament for MLB today. Again, this is going to lock later. It's just going to be a 4-game slate over on Yahoo, but they're doing a lot, and it's player friendly over on Yahoo, so it's a great place to play, and they're a great sponsor of ours. So go support them because they're helping support us as well. Real quick before, because I always forget when I'm hosting these shows, I just want to point out we do have NBA Live Before Lock at 5:30 Eastern. That's going to be Lofty and Josh. Nice duo there. And then another nice MMA duo tonight. 7:30 Eastern, MMA DFS strategy show. Jason Floyd and Pete Rogers, per usual, on Thursday. So the content does not stop after Alex and I get off the air here. All right, let's talk pitching. And we're going to talk the 6-game slate since we're going up to lock on that. So we're going to include the Nats, Phillies, and the Yankees and the Mets, the Subway Series. Let's start kind of right at the top. If we're talking about DraftKings pricing, we've got Kershaw, 10-3. He's a huge favorite. He's at home. Not that it matters because there's not fans, but 3.2 implied total here against Kershaw. I was looking up his strikeout rate for the season. He's at just under 30%, which is, I think, a lot better than what he was at the previous 2 seasons when we thought he was declining. Are you interested in Kershaw here, or is there something I'm missing as far as just playing a bunch of them?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's reason to be optimistic about Kershaw. I mean, as you're saying, his strikeout rate dipped a lot in previous years, but so far this year, about 30%. That is definitely above average. And facing an Arizona team that they're not the greatest matchup, a little bit better than average power, a little bit worse than average strikeouts. So that's not really helping, but he does pitch in one of the best pitcher stadiums in the league. So Kershaw, I mean, he stands out as probably like the safest option tonight.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, are you back on the Kershaw train now that he's kind of had a good start to the year?
Yeah, we have him projected favorably. He's not too expensive, I've noticed. And I think we talked about this maybe the first live before lock that you and I were on, but just what DraftKings specifically was going to do with their these high-priced pitchers. They're not like getting into the 12K range like they've been in previous years, which is probably better for the casual player. Some might argue it's worse for the pro player or like someone that's grinding day in and day out. But there's good arguments, I think, on both sides. And so Kershaw, highest priced pitcher on this slate. I think it's a perfectly fine price. I'm finding myself getting to a bunch of him here. The field's obviously getting to a bunch of Kershaw. He's coming up right now in our ownership projections at about half of lineups. And I don't think that's breaking news or anything. I'm just below half, but I'm going to get to a bunch of Kershaw on DraftKings, and then same thing on FanDuel and Yahoo as well. I think he's just a spectacular option. I don't really see a reason when you look at Vegas, when you look at Kershaw's underlying like advanced pitching stats, he looks solid. And just the implied total against him is very favorable at just over 3 runs for the Diamondbacks. Jordan also pointed out in the chat, thanks Jordan, MLB rankings are free today. So we run free premium stuff, or stuff that's normally premium. We make it free every once in a while. Today is going to be the MLB rankings along with the NHL ownership projections. We'll get those up pretty soon here. That slate locks later tonight. And then another slate that locks later tonight, NBA, we've got the player projections from Alex himself. After Kershaw, what are we doing with the rest of these guys? So I noticed Dylan Cease is 9,500, but he's not even a favorite. I'm sorry, he is a favorite, but he's not a big favorite. He's minus 135 right now. We've got Clevenger for 8,700, I believe, making his first start for the Padres. So those are kind of the guys in the next tier. I guess you could include Heaney at 8,200 as well. Do any of these guys jump off the page for you?
Yeah, I mean, Heaney definitely stands out as maybe a guy that's having a great year. Like that matchup versus the Padres, you can't like that and maybe the fact that he's a slight dog will depress the ownership a little bit, because it looks like the Angels only have about a 45% chance to win this game. So a lot of that's because they're good pitchers on both sides. With Clevenger, as you're saying, he got traded. Now he's starting for San Diego. So this game, it definitely seems like the one you can grab a pitcher from, maybe pair with Kershaw or pair them together. And we got decent options elsewhere. We got, as you said, Cease. He's a guy that we had higher expectations coming into the season, but he's really kind of disappointed so far. So it remains to be seen, like, what's going on with that. So as far as the ranking him, I'd probably go Heaney, Clevenger, Cease. But how are you feeling about him?
Yeah, the thing with Cease is that he's struggling with walks. Hit 6 walks in his last time out, 3 the previous 2 starts. In each of the previous 2 starts before that, like looking at his underlying stuff, swinging strike rate under 10%, and then his chase rate is under 30%, which are numbers that are close to average. So just not missing as many bats that's showing up in his strikeout rate. So I don't know if the pricing algorithm is broken with DK or what's going on. 9,500 for Cease, but he's priced like a stud, and he hasn't really been pitching like one. And you look at him compared to Kershaw, who's the only guy that's priced higher than him on the slate. I mentioned Kershaw's implied total a couple times, but it's 3.2 runs against. And then Cease, who's cheaper, not that much cheaper, is 4.5 runs against for this Royals squad. So hard for me to get to much Cease. I'm guessing he's one of our lowest owned options, whereas Kershaw is the highest owned player on the slate right now. Having a little issue with Cease is still getting 16% ownership. I mean, is that gap wide enough for you to consider him? He's basically a third of the ownership of Kershaw from when we ran this morning.
I think there's other options I'd probably rather go to. I mean, 15 projection for 9,100 on DraftKings. It's not a great value, so there's definitely a reason to go under there. But there's some other options I'm kind of intrigued by that have tougher matchups, but maybe the price is better. Danny Duffy versus the White Sox, Taijuan Walker versus Boston. I mean, those aren't guys that you can really expect huge performances from, but you get a lot of salary relief, and I think that maybe they're also leverage plays, so that's kind of intriguing to me.
Yeah, Duffy was a guy I was eyeing down a bit. I didn't get to a ton of him in my 20 lineups. I got to 5 shares out of 20, 25%. I have my numbers. If I was running 150 as well, I would just be under the field actually on Duffy. I'd be at about 13%. He's a little bit above that, but I think one of the better, like he's a boom bust option against this White Sox team. Big total against him. But the White Sox do have a decent strikeout rate versus lefties. If you look at their active roster, they're at 22.6%. The problem is all around, like power. It's just so much on this White Sox team. So again, sorting on a team level active roster on FanDuel, they have a 159 WRC plus against lefties. Duffy obviously being a lefty, and then the next best team is the Nationals versus lefties. They're at 133. So just creating some distance between themselves and the next team. We're still working with small samples. So maybe they've just run hot against a couple lefties, and that's brought their numbers way up. But definitely a scary matchup for Duffy. But it sounds like you think the strikeouts could be there if things go well for him. So 7,100, I think probably my favorite mid-tier option, or my favorite sub 8K option over on DraftKings. Let's quick brush over like J.A. Happ, 8,800. I guess we can talk about each pitcher a little bit. 8,800 going up against the Mets, similar to Cease, just not a low enough implied total. For me, not enough strikeout upside. I don't think from Hap, but is he a guy you're getting to at all over on DK?
I think he's probably at the bottom of my list, to be honest. Like, hasn't had good results this year. Last year, not really that exceptional. I have him for about 18% strikeout rate. And the Mets lineup, for some reason, they're exceptionally cheap today, but they're also a good lineup. About 10% better than average ISO. And the strikeout rate's about average. So all in all, I think that the Mets stack could be really popular today.
Yeah, it actually. Yeah, so we'll talk about stacks, but you hit it right on the head. Mets one of the best values on the slate, like actually best value by far. And I'll get the updated numbers once we talk about hitting for the top stack tool. But the top stack tool shows each team's ownership compared to their chance of being the top stack, calculated by Alex. Uses our ownership projection to get the average of all 9 hitters in the lineup, and then as well as the value metric. And the Mets have a 29% chance of being the top value. And that is extraordinarily high on a 6-game slate. Even next best team is at under 18%. So just one of the best values all around. And I don't get the price here on Hap. So there's been a couple guys seemingly every slate that I've played this year for MLB where I just don't understand the pricing or what goes into DK's algorithm. But I think here I'm just passing on Hap. And then like you compare him, like the talent of Hap at this point in his career to a guy who's cheaper in Clevenger, 8,700 with a lower implied total against. I don't really know how you choose Hap in that scenario at all, regardless of where the ownership's at. So What are you thinking about Clevenger here? One of the more popular pitchers on the slate as well.
Yeah, going back to your point, I think that they must have expected a much better pitcher to be pitching this game, like Garrett Cole or something. I think that's how maybe a mix-up could happen with the pricing. So that definitely is going to siphon a lot of ownership to the Mets. Clevenger, they got that. Let's see, he's going up against the Angels, who they're not my favorite matchup because they have low average strikeouts and they have decent power. Of course, Mike Trout, Ohtani, Rendon, those are all really good hitters. Clevenger's strikeout rate has been good this year, though, so that is one reason why we might go to him. But I actually prefer Heaney on the other side going up against San Diego. It's a little bit of a tougher matchup, but he just has a higher strikeout rate to work with. But how are you dissecting these two guys?
Yeah, I mean, I like both guys. The problem is just Clevenger's ownership, I think, is a little bit too high right now. And I think Heaney should probably be the higher owned guy, a little bit cheaper, a little bit higher strikeout rate, like you said. The Angels, like if you look at them on a team basis, they're near the bottom in K rate. But I was listening to Adam, and he made a pretty good point on the strategy show this morning. If any of you guys caught that, it's kind of like the strikeout rate can get brought down so far or brought up so far on a team level based on one or two guys having a really low or really high K rate. So is that something you're looking at? Are you looking at the individual batters in this Angels lineup or more on a team rate? I guess, yeah, I'll just throw that one over to you.
Yeah, I always look at the individual batters and then kind of weight it based on lineup position because the starting pitcher is going to be facing the top of the order more times than the bottom of the order. What I'm seeing with the Angels is that you got Fletcher. He may or may not be in the lineup today, I think, because I know
he's questionable.
He has some injury, but he strikes out about 11%, which is half the average. Andrelton Simmons, if he's in the lineup, he strikes out 9%. Rendon strikes out about 14%. So there are a few guys that really bring down the rate. Now, if we get a lineup and maybe Fletcher and Simmons aren't in the lineup, then that would really affect Clevenger's projection, I think. So that's a tough one because we probably won't have any chance of getting a lineup before lock.
Yeah, and even if we do, I mean, we're only 40 minutes away from lock for DraftKings, but for FanDuel, and this is why it's so valuable that we continue to update the rankings and projections as the lineups come out, because like especially on days like Sunday where you're expecting weird lineups during a normal season, or a team has a couple injuries, a couple guys, normal players are out, that can change the projection and make Clevenger go from being an okay play to, if Fletcher's out and you put a guy with a 22% K rate, like an average K rate in there versus righties, that could bump him up enough to where he's more in play for me. So I'll be keeping a close eye on Clevenger specifically, because it looks like there is a question mark on whether or not Fletcher's going to be in this lineup. $8,200 for Heaney. We've hit on him a couple times. I got to 30%, so 6 out of 20 lineups with Andrew Heaney. I would be comfortable having, double that if that's how my lineup shook out. I think it is one of the better strikeout matchups on the slate. Padres are a pretty good lineup. Like, they've got Tatis and Machado, especially what you're worried about versus lefties. But it sounds like you're okay going head on into this Padres lineup, and you're with this ownership projection we have on him.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Padres certainly are a great lineup, but we gotta pick at least 2 pitchers on DraftKings. Right. So it's like you can get a really good pitcher in a bad matchup like this one, and that's a good but not great pitcher. Both of them are only in the 8Ks, so they kind of compensate for that. So definitely something I'm willing to do. One note I forgot to mention too is this is a 4 p.m. local time game. Usually LA is really good for pitchers because the temperature goes down a lot at night, but this game is supposed to be 82 degrees. So I think that maybe Angel Stadium isn't quite as good a pitcher's park tonight.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, it is. I was noticing it was a little bit weird to see a game in LA at a 7:10 Eastern start, but that makes sense. Like the 3:05 starts that they usually have, or the 4:05 Eastern starts they usually have on Sunday. So it's just in that time slot. The schedule has just been all over the place, as I'm sure everyone watching the show is aware. So there's kind of weird quirks every day. Have you felt like this season's been easier or tougher to play for MLB DFS for you specifically? Or has it just been the same kind of thing as usual, business as usual?
Yeah, I mean, it's been about the same. The thing that I forgot about is like the start of the season, you have so much less to go off of than the end of the season. So it's like you get to the end of the year and you're like, oh, I know exactly how to rate everyone. And then that's the last thing you remember. But now we're like a little bit more than a month into the season. We just don't have as much data as normal, like for halfway through the season. So it's a little bit harder to nail down all the different guys, but we're all on an even playing field there. So what have you noticed anything different this year?
Just like trying to keep track, usually takes me a month or so to keep track of where everyone's at and like kind of get in this rhythm. And then I haven't been able to get into a rhythm, like actually playing MLB DFS, because I've been playing NHL a lot. I've been dabbling in some PGA. I've been playing MMA. I actually really like playing some MMA, and we've got tools and stuff. I've got all these tools at my disposal. So I just haven't been prioritizing MLB as much besides the days that I come on the show. So, and that's a really tough thing to do when you're not, it's probably even tougher in a sport like NBA where you need to know the rotations and stuff. I mean, here you at least get the lineups, but like not knowing stuff about some of these guys jumping in and jumping out for a couple days at a time has been difficult. So other than that, I mean, I'm basically just using the tools on the site and relying on our projections and our ownership projections to get me there. And so it hasn't been going too bad. I've been pretty solid on FanDuel, been really up and down on DraftKings for MLB, and then I played some on Yahoo as well and done okay over there.
Nice, man. It's good to hear. This past week has been really interesting. If you've been playing like like we saw a couple of days ago, there was like 300-point teams because Alex Dickerson hit like 4 homers and another guy had like 55 points or something. Like, did he play that night?
Yeah, so it was Ozuna, or was it Ozuna triple donged and then Dickerson triple donged and had like, it was like, I remember checking the FanDuel scores with like 80 points on FanDuel. So whatever that translates to on DraftKings, 50, 60, and then huge score over on Yahoo. But yeah, it was just like, man, this is not a normal score. Like, this is an NBA score that are taking down these tournaments. And it just happened to be on guys that were fairly popular. So I was dead pretty early that night. I imagine, just based on how you play, that you didn't do too hot that night.
No, it wasn't my night either. It's like, it's interesting though, because I wonder how that affects like the psyche of everyone playing. Like, maybe people are going to go more chalky. But I mean, that night just proved once again to all of us that if the high-owned players have really good nights, it just like you need absurd scores to win. So that's not really the easiest way to win in MLB. So definitely looking for some angles where like not many people are on it, but because it's baseball, it could happen, you know?
Yeah, exactly. We see it all the time. Like, we've seen bad teams, and they haven't been bad so far, but like the Marlins, Tigers, these teams win GPPs, and it's not that out of the realm of possibility. And they always have 3.5 implied totals. So if you're playing every day, it's going to take a while for you to realize the upside that some of these like bad teams have. But I think everyone in MLB has the same kind of ranges of probabilities, or I should say ranges of upsides. Like, obviously the Yankees stacked roster has more upside than the Tigers, but you don't need like 100th percentile outcome for the Tigers to be the nuts. Like, they might just need a 90th percentile outcome and score 10 runs or something. And they're going to do that a couple times a year. So yeah, just playing those low owned stacks is the way to go for MLB. I know I have FOMO sometimes in some of these teams. I'm like, how can they not just destroy this pitcher? And everyone in the lineup's 20%, and then a 4% owned stack ends up scoring more runs. So you just gotta kind of embrace that variance, right?
Definitely, yeah. A great example tonight is the Mets, because everyone's going to have them. They got a cupcake matchup versus J. Happ. I mean, maybe the Yankees bullpen's better, but they're all like dirt cheap too. So like, they're great plays, but then you look at their chance of being the best team on the slate and on the top stacks. I kind of give a probability for that, so I'm pulling that up here. But really, it's not that high. So if we have huge ownership on the Mets, which right now 10.6%, so the third highest owned stack, 7% chance of being the top stack, which is fourth from the bottom. So that's kind of the quintessential spot where you got a stack that's not that good, garnering huge ownership. Now, one interesting thing though is like, maybe you take a couple of guys from the Mets for like salary relief to really stack the rest of your lineup and then get a contrarian stack. So how have you been doing the stacking recently? Do you do like 2 full stacks? Do you leave some one-offs, or what have you been doing?
Yeah, so I mean, it'll depend on the site. But I have noticed some really good players that I respect have in large field stuff, and like most of the time I'm trying to win the 20 maxes or above, and I just throw in whatever lineup I can for the 3 maxes and the single entries that I enter at low dollars. So I've noticed that at least at the beginning of the season, when I was going through lineup study, FC Pros lineup study, you guys can get through us if you sign up through Fantasy Cruncher if you want that at a discount with the Awesemo Plus package. But I noticed that everyone's pretty much doing 5-man stacks on normal size slates, and I would consider 6 to kind of be on the edge of the 4 and 5-man stacks for what I want to do. But I've noticed that people haven't been running that many 5-3s in large field tournaments. So I've been focusing on 5-1s or 5 naked stacks, and then some 5-2-1s as well. I'm assuming that's just because people are trying to not get duped. But is that something you really need to worry about in MLB DFS on like a bigger slate or even a 6-gamer like what we have tonight? I know it will matter on a 4-gamer. You obviously don't want to get duped. But are you worried about that at all on 6-game slates and 7-game slates and stuff like that?
Honestly, like I haven't seen many duped lineups, like even in the larger field tournaments. And in baseball, there are so many different ways to match two teams because you got 18 players.
Yeah.
So it's not like the biggest concern for me, but a lot of that's because if you're adjusting for ownership and trying to avoid the most popular lineups, those are the ones that are going to be duped anyway. So like if you try to really max out your projection and stack your team with the best guys, that has a much higher chance of being duped, where if you use the full player pool, your chance of being duped is pretty low.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, in MLB, like I would lean more towards using the total sum of ownership and maybe capping there. Whereas in stuff like Showdown, where there's only a few roster spots, there's only 6 roster spots, then I would be more looking at the product and just trying to get one low-owned guy to make my roster unique. Thinking about like NFL Showdown coming up in one week from today. Wow. So I like playing those kind of games as well and just trying to get some different lineups, some not heavily duped lineups, but I always like to hear your take on every sport, really. Let's move it over. Actually, let's quick talk about these cheaper pitchers. We've got Eflin at 7,800. He was a guy who Adam and Josh had a pretty interesting discussion on for the strategy show this morning. So Eflin is a -172 favorite. He is striking out, let's see here, 37.7% of righties. He's also striking out a bunch of lefties. I think his K rate was at about 30% overall. But like last year, he was striking out, I think, under 20% of lefties. Anyways, so they were a little puzzled as far as what to expect from Eflin going forward. But he's 7,800. He's a favorite here. Nats are kind of like the Angels in that they have a couple guys that just don't strike out at all. But other than that, I think there's going to be ways for Eflin to get strikeouts. So are you buying into him at all for 7,800?
A little bit. I mean, his strikeout rate of 33% this year is exceptional, like certainly. He's got a tough matchup versus the Nats. Maybe not the toughest lineup this year, but they don't strike out a ton. It's really a matter of whether you buy into that 33% or not. And so I'm just kind of pulling it up to see what sample size we have. 159 batters faced. Oh, sorry, 23. Oh, sorry, I brought up the wrong guy. Okay. So he's faced 111 batters, struck out 37. And I mean, that is way up from last year at 18%. So
it looks like he's getting a lot of more guys to chase out of the zone, which could be boosting his strikeout rate. He's definitely running hot on strikeouts. And I think that's kind of the conclusion that Josh and Adam came to this morning. 40% chase rate, even in 5 starts, is pretty ridiculous. So I doubt some of these K numbers stay up. But if he's even a 25% strikeout pitcher going forward, this is probably a pretty good price for him at 7,800. So that's kind of where I'm at. The matchup's not ideal against the Nats, but I don't think it's one you need to necessarily shy away from. You would expect him more often than not to get run support. But that being said, do you really need to take a risk on Eflin at 7,800 when you can just go to Heaney or Clevenger or even Duffy for cheaper? So I haven't gotten to much Eflin this far, but he's a guy I'm keeping in the back of my mind here if we get a couple more lineups and I end up re-crunching.
Yeah, I think Eflin's not a bad play because that 33% is a reasonable sample size, and there are guys that make big jumps from year to year. It's kind of surprising that it'd be him, given that in 2017 he struck out 12%. But it's hard to argue with. So the one thing is when you're chasing guys like Eflin, he's showing like 19.5 average fantasy points per game for 7,800. So I think he might be more popular because of that. He has the second highest average points on the slate, where we kind of believe that Heaney and Clevenger are much better pitchers overall. So
yeah, for sure. Okay, last guy. I think he's probably the only cheap pitcher that is going to get a lot of ownership. And he's got a 5 total against him with a pretty bad Red Sox roster he's going up against. But Taijuan Walker is 4,700 on DraftKings. Now the price discrepancy for him compared to FanDuel, I think he's 9,200 over on FanDuel. His Yahoo price is $34, so much more reasonable on DraftKings and Yahoo, whereas FanDuel, you're probably not going to get to him too often. But cheap Taijuan Walker going up against this Red Sox lineup, 4,700. Theoretically, I mean, I don't think there's a pitch count on him. I think he's going to go 6 innings or so if this start goes well for him. Are you looking to play more Walker, or do you like going to the other side and playing a bunch of Red Sox bats against him?
I think Walker is in play. I mean, he's 4,700, and as you're saying, there's no reason to believe that he'll be on a pitch count. So that's just way too low. The park factor in Fenway is bad, but the Red Sox lineup has been a little bit worse than average this year, but the lineup they're rolling out today just came out, and it's not really looking like a big advantage. So I think that Taijuan Walker is kind of in play, but then it becomes a matter of using all that salary productively, and that can be hard to do.
Yeah, so there's a couple teams. Like Walker right now is my highest owned pitcher. I've got him in over half my lineups. But then I look at some of the exposures for my top exposed hitters, and it's Bellinger, it's Rhys Hoskins, it's guys like that that I'm getting in one-offs where I'm upgrading just by going down to just the dumpster and playing Taijuan Walker. I mean, he's not even that bad of a pitcher either. So it looks like another situation where he just wasn't slated to pitch today. DraftKings thought someone else was going to pitch. It's still a high total against him, and he's going to be decently popular, but not popular enough where I'm super interested in the Red Sox, and not popular enough where I'm thinking about other options in this range. So he's pretty much the only guy I'm getting to that is going to be super cheap on DK. Any other pitchers you want to talk about, or should we move it on over to the stacks?
Just Salmon for the Mets. That's someone I'm avoiding because he hasn't gotten more than 50 pitches, I believe. So that's something to note. And then Luke Weaver, that's an interesting leverage pitcher. Leverage pitchers isn't generally the greatest strategy, but he's got a decent strikeout rate by going up against the Dodgers at Dodger Stadium. That's about as bottom of the barrel matchups as he gets. So maybe a GPP dart and Luke Weaver.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, so when you talk about leverage, and it's probably a really overused term in DFS around the community, but I think the best example of leverage would be stacking against a chalky pitcher. That's the best way to explain it. I'm sure the audience knows this, but yeah, there's definitely something to be said for playing a pitcher against a very chalky stack. It doesn't work as great because even if your pitcher does well, your stack could still go off in the 6th and 7th and 8th and 9th innings. But if he can kind of mitigate the damage, especially if he's cheap, is when I like doing it the best. And Weaver, he doesn't have phenomenal strikeout stuff. 8,200, obviously the matchup sucks. But if he was like closer to 6K, I think I'd be more interested in playing him as more of a game theory guy, because he does have some talent, but I think he's just a little bit too expensive. His upside is really capped against this Dodgers team.
Yeah, and the Dodgers aren't the most popular stack today, so you're not getting as much leverage as you really hope to with a game theory play.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's talk about some of our top stacks. We just hit on the Dodgers a little bit. Looking at the top stacks tool, one way I like to do this is, and you guys can set this sheet up even if you're not great with Excel, is just to subtract the ownership share from each team's top stack percentage for whichever site you're talking about. And it does vary across DK, FanDuel, and Yahoo for today. So looking over at Yahoo quick, the Padres look to be one of the best stacks to target, 13.2% top stack percentage and a 6.9% ownership share. Now, the value's tough to get to with the Padres over there, but if you're going to a cheap option like someone like Walker, it's going to make that a little bit easier to get to, but you're going to sacrifice a couple points in your total projected lineup. Over on DK, this has held true for the duration of the morning and the early afternoon. The White Sox are the most under-owned stack on the slate right now. The problem is, similar to what I was talking about with the Padres on Yahoo, their top value percentage is very low. So you're going to need some cheapies to fit in with this White Sox stack. That being said, are you finding ways to get to the Sox stack against Duffy, who's a guy we kind of like as well?
No, yeah, it's like the leverage stacks are against the pitchers I want. So that's definitely a spot where you can have exposure to both sides. But the White Sox, they do look like a good option today. We got team total of 5.4. That's definitely above average. And the actual lineup that we're expecting about...
They just dropped it.
That's right. We got it.
We're good.
So 6 of the 9 batters all have above average power. So high upside stack going up against a pitcher who's good but not great. So White Sox definitely look good today. And hopefully that the price tags on them will drive down the ownership.
Yeah, if someone's like multi-entering and just getting into it, I think looking for situations like this where you got a really high upside team that strikes out hitters going up against that strikes out a lot, going up against a pitcher that can get strikeouts, just like a really wide range of outcome type of game. I think based on the lineup and the opposing starting pitcher, I think targeting games like this, both sides of it, is a good just general rule when you're talking about MME, especially if you're hand building. Maybe you make a couple Duffy lineups, maybe you make a couple White Sox stacks. It's not going to work out 100% of the time, but like we can see clear paths to each side working out. So I love targeting those games. Right there with you. On the Sox, if you can make it work, their salary is just really tough getting in like all the good hitters in the lineup. So Anderson is at 5,700, Grandal 5K, Abreu 5,500, Moncada 5,400, Luis Robert. I think maybe your favorite player of all time in your projections, guy I always get to in the 7th hole, but he's 4,700. So DK's caught on to you. If you can make that work, I really, really like that Sox stack. Let's go to a stack that isn't so favorable using the top stacks tool. Again, rankings are going to be free today. Sometimes the top stack tool is free, but today we've got MLB rankings, as Nightbot just pointed out in the YouTube chat. What are your thoughts on the Philly stack? And then really quick, we got a question from Jeff in Premium Slack. Roman Quinn or Jay Bruce and DK Cash. Quinn batting leadoff. Bruce is batting 7th. I'm assuming Quinn is a little bit higher projected. And so your answer would probably be Quinn there, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that price on Quinn for the leadoff spot, it doesn't even really matter how good he is. And that's good because so far this year he's at 30% on base, 15% ISO. So pretty below average player, but just getting the most plate appearances possible. Being on in the leadoff spot, I think that is a really good play in cash. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would go Quinn there, and use the $700 difference that you get if you can upgrade another hitter, because obviously Bruce is at 3K, Quinn
2,300. I think he was talking about DK Cash there. We went over the White Sox stack. So we like the Phillies hitters, but the problem is they're going to be really popular. And a lot of that probably has to do with cheap guys like Quinn and like Bruce at 3K. So what do you think about the stack overall? Do you think it's smart to maybe avoid one or both of those guys if you are stacking Phillies to probably be different?
Yeah, that's a great question because you got Bruce and Quinn, like they're going to get a ton of ownership because that just makes it so you can get a much better pitcher. Like it's not crazy to just stack up all the expensive guys in this heart of the order for the Phillies because it doesn't look like they're priced particularly well. But like it looks like those guys are all projected to be super high owned too. So I'm at kind of a loss with this team because they're projected to do so well with the 6-point total. But they're really, really popular. So that's it. To me, that says it's a game where you can have lineups with them, but you really need to make the money elsewhere in the lineup to make that work because everyone's going to be on the Phillies today.
Yeah, I think it's one of those deals where I'm probably going to end up getting to more like 2-man stacks of the Phillies and then stacking a way lower owned team and just hoping I can get the one or two guys that hit the home runs in this lineup, the Harpers, Rhys Hoskins, Real Mutos, and just hope that the stack doesn't go completely nuclear. That's my plan as of now. We're about, 15. Is this 4:05 Eastern. We've got over 300 of you in here. If you guys could hit the like button, hit the notification bell, all that stuff, that really helps us out a lot. I think we can end up getting to 100 likes before this end of the show. I'm only seeing 38 on my screen, but give it a like for the number one DFS player in the world, giving you some quality analysis here.
We got a strong arm with these folks, Jake. So if you don't hit that like button, me and Jake are going to hunt you down and kick your ass.
Whoa. All right.
I was actually, in a sanctioned boxing match. The problem is that's a lot of work to prepare for. So make sure to hit that like button.
Yeah, make sure you hit the like button. You do not want Alex to show his boxing skills on you. If you see him on Twitter, you've seen the boxing video, and I don't want any part of that. And I'm sure the audience does not either. Let's move it on to another stack here. So just to kind of go back to the Phillies actually quick, they're just going to be a little bit over-owned. And so I think that's what's keeping me off of them. It sounds like Alex wasn't too keen on them because of their pricing, because of the ownership. There's not a lot of spots to get a edge here. How about KC? We haven't really talked about them, but going up against Cease, I mean, there's a chance that Cease just isn't going to take that next step this season. And KC is basically getting no ownership on DraftKings, but they've got a decent top stack probability. It's low, but they're really low owned, and they've got a good top value percentage. Is that a stack you're looking to target at all here?
Yeah, I mean, he's been dreadful this year, to be honest, like 5.7 xFIP. So we're kind of going off his longer term sample that suggests he's like a little bit above average, but there's a chance he just doesn't have it this year. The prices on Kansas City are going to really drive down the ownership. One guy that's really popping out, Adalberto Mondesi. Mm-hmm. He's been horrible this year. 5% ISO, 20% on base. But he's like one of the only guys in the league that has power and really good stolen base upside. So what do you make of his start this year? Because last year he was like my favorite fantasy player. This year he's been losing us all the money.
Yeah, so I noticed he's one of my highest exposed guys on my last crunch, and I'm guessing he's going to stay that way just because people aren't playing him. And like you can't just use the sample of this season when you're talking about a hitter, only a couple hundred plate appearances. So it's possible he just stinks this year and maybe figures some stuff out over the offseason, or maybe just running through a bad stretch right now. I don't think he's forgotten to hit, like how to hit entirely. So I'm just going where, like with the bigger sample, that he's still a good player for DFS. The problem is just that he's batting 7th. He's 8th. Wow. He was projected to bat 7th from what I saw. So even getting a bump down a little further in the lineup, still, I've got him in 30% in that 20 max right now. So power speed combo for 3,100. If you can somehow figure out a way to get on base a couple times, you might end up with a couple stolen bases. He still, I guess, theoretically could hit home runs. He just hasn't been good so far. But I'm still somewhat of a believer in Mondesi here. I'm liking the amount of White Sox I just got there. They're actually probably my number one stack right now. Let's go back to the Dodgers against Weaver. I think Weaver is a respectable pitcher. Dodgers look to be up there as far as ownership, but they're not getting owned probably as much as they should be. Is there anything you like for this Dodgers lineup? Especially considering we won't have this lineup prior to lock, and if there's one or two guys missing, you might have a couple of dead Dodgers stacks in the player pool, especially on DraftKings.
That would definitely be nice. So, the Dodgers, they're probably the best lineup in baseball, and you got a situation where they're playing at 9:40 Eastern, so that's the night game in LA. So the temperature is actually 8 degrees lower than the Angels as far as projected temperature. So a little bit more of a pitcher's park tonight. And you got this matchup versus Luke Weaver. He's a pretty good pitcher, so far about average this year, though.
Yeah.
The prices are high, so maybe they won't be the most popular stacks, so they could be a little bit sneaky. So I like them, but how are you feeling the Dodgers?
Yeah, I like the Dodgers. I'm noticing Bellinger's coming up quite a bit, which I never really have an issue with. The problem is we don't know if he's going to play. Maybe that decreases his ownership, especially in the lower stakes stuff. Is people, I don't know if he has a questionable tag on DraftKings, but if he does, that's something I've learned from Tom, is just that you don't realize like the bubble that you live in this DFS world, like the people that are using optimizers that are getting all the starting players in as they come up, and like that subscribe to sites like Awesemo and other quality sites out there. Like there's also a bunch of people that are just building lineups at noon every day and just throwing them in there. So anyone with a questionable tag is usually someone that, if they're a good player, you probably want to target because they're going to get a little bit of decrease of ownership, especially if you're playing like tournaments like the mini max or the low stakes 20 maxes, the no management fee tournaments over on Yahoo. Anyone that has red around their name is someone I always like. So I like Bellinger, and that's only the most obvious thing in the world. I like Cody Bellinger for DFS with the 5.5 implied total, but I think looking for guys like that is a way to you're almost never wrong doing that. If you think they're going to play, obviously switch them out if they're not. But notice that in NHL, I've noticed that in MLB to some extent, and I'm sure it's the same exact way in NBA, because there's probably a ton of casual guys, especially at the beginning of the season, playing these showdowns as well. There can be big edges to be found there. What about some cheaper stacks? Let's circle back to the Mets here. Going up against Hap, it is a good implied total. Jordan says smash that like button. We're still 27 likes away from 100. Again, you do not want Alex to show you his boxing skills. That video was 9 months ago that you posted on Twitter. Just imagine what he's learned 9 months since quarantine. Not a lot of DFS. Obviously was working on his boxing skills. He's basically Mike Tyson at this point. So 25 more likes and we'll get to 100 and you guys will be spared. But Mets going up against Hap, super good value over on DK especially. but what are you planning to do with them?
Maybe having exposure to them a little bit. I mean, it just says guys that kind of complete the lineup and give you that 2K player that really makes it work. So that's always a situation where I'm happy to have guys. And I'm trying to fix the projections here.
No, you're good. I can take it over from here and talk about a couple stacks that I'm getting to.
Okay.
Can get pretty hectic here for Alex at lock. I've already got my lineups in, so if you guys got questions, feel free to hit us up. General strategy questions, or I guess we could do some 1v1s or 2v2s, even though that's what the projections and the rankings are for. And the rankings are free today, so there's no real excuses for 1v1 questions. Just play the guy that's ranked higher. If they're ranked the same, flip a coin, or upgrade and get projections, because then you can get it down to the 100th of a point. I think even further than that. So just another reason to subscribe, get your MLB monthly pass. We've got about a month left of regular season baseball, and then the playoffs, I think, are going to start right around when they normally do in October. We've also got the fantasy football draft kit. I've got a draft tonight, so I'm pretty pumped about that. If you guys haven't checked that out, let me check on this promo code. But the fantasy football draft kit is awesome. The draft wingman has been my favorite tool. I've been doing some best balls on Yahoo and DK, and I'm not going to get to 150 max in some of these bigger tournaments, but I'm going to get to quite a few, and they're pretty soft. So use the tools on the site. It's only $30 for the draft kit. We've also got deals on the NFL. I believe it's the monthly pass. I want to say it's promo code Sleeper. Let me tell you really quick what that is for. Promo code Sleeper is 25% off Awesemo Plus NFL monthly. With that, you get the free draft kit. So if you got a fantasy draft coming up, or you want to grind some best balls for the next week or so, there's not a better deal out there. So use the 25% off of NFL monthly. Promo code Sleeper is the way to go. And then you'll be locked in for a month, win a bunch of money, subscribe for a year, and repeat. All right, Alex, did we get the projection filled? Did I filibuster enough?
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Yeah, the problem was this dude, Edward Olivares for Kansas City, was messing up my projections. So fix that. We're all good to go. He's not in the player pool today, so it didn't really matter anyway, but maybe a little bit less Adalberto Mondesi now that he's back 8th, in addition to being on such a cold streak. So
yeah, honestly. All right, so we're still waiting on lineups for San Diego, the Angels, the Blue Jays, Arizona, and the Dodgers.
Oh, man. I just finished my my lineups for DraftKings, and the lineup that pops up to the top, Dylan Cease, Zach Eflin.
Whoa.
So I'm going full like regression. Or wait, no, I guess it's funny because they're like the opposite, where Eflin is the guy that's been running super hot, but all the projection models are down on him, and then Cease is the guy that's been like super cold. So
there you go. Yeah, progression, regression, it all balances out. Yin and yang, something like that. Well, my best lineup right now on DK is this fire starting pitcher pairing of Taijuan Walker and Martin Perez. So if that game's low scoring, maybe I can get 10, 15 points out of each guy. And then I've got a pretty nice White Sox stack with all the good players and a couple nice one-offs after that. So weird stuff happens when you build off an optimizer, but and I built more lineups than what I needed. And I think that's something Alex has been really vocal about for MLB, especially, is just building more lineups than you need, cutting off some that are going to be too popular. And that's how you get rid of some of those Mets stacks. Because if you just use the projections, even if you don't like the Mets, like you're gonna get a bunch of Mets stacks with the two chalky starting pitchers, and that's probably something you want to avoid to a certain extent in MLB DFS if you're playing tournaments. And so building more lineups, cutting off some of the ones with the highest ownership projection total, I think is a smart strategy in MLB DFS. And we have on YouTube, we have a playlist called The Fantasy Crunch where Alex went through and showed some of his favorite strategies for MLB. And I'm sure a bunch of them, if not all of them, apply for MLB DFS this season.
Yeah, so you're going to love the pitcher pairing that I'm getting to a lot, man. Clayton Kershaw, Taijuan Walker.
There we go. One expensive pitcher that's chalky, which is no problem. I mean, you're not a huge proponent of you have to get that different at pitcher, right? You'd rather get different with bats.
For sure, yeah. I mean, pitcher, you just got to get above average performance usually. So that's a lot easier than bats when you need like an outlier performance. And then we're getting a lot of White Sox, a lot of Dodgers as well. So
us and all the 290 people that are watching this right now, and 200 of you have not hit the like button. So the 88 that have hit the like button, Alex and myself, that's 90 people are taking all the money tonight with the White Sox stack. I'm getting a lot of Luis Robert one-offs, other stacks that I'm getting to a little bit, maybe that we haven't talked about as much. What about the Yankees against Giselman? 4.7 implied total. So not a great total for the Yankees, but it is pretty warm in New York. Obviously, this being a day game, 85 degrees. Just kind of a watered down Yankees lineup with all the injuries they have going on. But they're still a top 3 or 4 stack for me right now. How are you feeling about the Yankees against Giselman?
I like them a lot. I mean, the temperature, as you mentioned, in the 80s, it's a day game, so that definitely looks pretty good. And although the lineup doesn't have some of the favorites that we're used to, I mean, this lineup's got a ton of power. I have them about 15% higher than average. So I think that this is a really good spot for the Yankees, and the ownership doesn't look like it's going to be super high.
Yeah. Over under 5 strikeouts for Clevinger tonight. I would say just in general, I'm probably betting the over for Clevinger at 5. Because if you get 5 exactly, you push. But I would probably say over. I think he gets 6 or 7 most nights in this spot against the Angels. But maybe just look at props for that. Or you're probably looking at props and asking for a prop pick there. Do you bet any MLB props at all, Alex?
I haven't done the MLB props as much this year because it's one of those things where I forgot kind of like that I was really good at betting the props like once we had the information from the start of the year, but that's really where my edge was coming from. So I'm just kind of waiting to compile more data for betting the strikeouts.
Yeah, and if you guys are looking for more betting content, go to the link I just posted in chat, Awesemo Odds. Go on Odd Shopper. Just poke around on the site. And anything on the top toolbar, I think you're going to like what you see, whether you're into gambling, DFS. Obviously, we're a DFS site, but we're starting to post some really good articles. Ben Raz is doing them. Julian Edlow, Zach Brunner. These guys have stuff for NBA, MLB. I saw some NHL articles the other day. I was very excited to read those. PGA, huge tournament this week, the Tour Championship. We had live before lock for that last night. That doesn't lock until tomorrow at noon Eastern, I want to say. So go rewatch the PGA live before lock show. We've got the MMA strategy show coming on at 7:30 Eastern, NBA live before lock starting in about an hour and a half, 5:30 Eastern with Lofty and Josh. I think it's a 2-game NBA slate. I've been liking playing these short slates for NHL more and more, and I'm sure Alex is going to be grinding the NBA slates as well. We've got projections, ownership projections, all that good stuff. I believe the NBA projections are free content for today only. So if you want to check those out, feel free to do so. MLB rankings are free as well. And then NHL ownership projections. So try those out if you're looking to become a member. Promo code SLEEPER is how you get 25% off Awesemo Plus NFL monthly. And with that, you will also get the draft kit, which is going to be very useful for me tonight. Again, I have a fantasy draft, a season-long one with all my buddies, and looking forward to destroying them with Alex's season-long projections. Anything else you want to mention before Jordan hits the music and we get out of here, Alex?
Yeah, just thanks everyone for supporting the site, and looking forward to a good slate here of MLB. So good luck tonight.
All right, good luck, everybody. Content doesn't stop here. Feel free to stay on the YouTube site, hit the notification bell, hit the like button on the way out, and good luck.